This is what it's all about, Florida. The festivals are all about the jam session. All right, let's kick it off, boys. From the top.
I got a job to do. Every day get the kids to school. Every hour I got time to lose. Every second we escape the rules. Come on. Every month gotta make it rain. Every year got myself to blame. Over a decade and it's still the same. Wasted time, petrified and afraid to change. Pheromones of ecstasy. Promised land against the tree. Burnt skin mixed with clean laundry. Choose you, you're my everything. Come on! Feel love burning in your eyes. Some in the things that I fantasize. Lifetime of truth, no time for lies. Hotel rooms, nothing out. Wrapped in a cocoon, it's a secret. You're untouchable in secret. You're my ocean moon, so majestic. Whoa! And intelligent, well let me prove. I was a fool before I met you. Whoa. Taste was bitter, booze was flowing, chasing evil blues, self-destruction, and depression till the drink gets you.
Some heart is clean, your mind is talking. Give it out, your brother, open up the floor, boy. And the yahoos in and I swing from shore to shore. Shut down, coming in, happy, it's one more. Give it up for our boy Modest Yahoo on the microphone. Come on!
Riddle! Nothing's changed, they stay the same. But the hourglass still remains. Some particles trot through rough terrain. Our hearts beat forever and a day. The fine connection unexplained. A bubble burst, blitzing as two flames. Back at the demons, got that soul to range. Take a leap of faith, are we insane? Hear moans of ecstasy. A promised land against the tree. Some burnt skin mixed with clean laundry. I choose you, you're my everything. Come on! Feel love burning in your eyes. Some in the beast that I miss the sky. Like a hotel rooms, wrapped in a cocoon. It's a secret. You're untouchable in secret. You're my ocean moon, so majestic and intelligent. Will it be proof that I was a fool? Simmer was a fool.
fucking sick. Give it up for Modesiano on the microphone. Come on. He said he was gonna just beatbox and he threw down some fucking versage. Amazing. You never know what's gonna happen here at the Sugar Shack. You never know. It rains, we jam, we got guests.
It rains, we jam, we got guests. Hey AJ, how are ya?
What's up, dude?
Long time, mate. It's so good to see you, and I love your background. It's very, it's very orthodox chic. I'm trying to work on something here, for like similar vibes, like a mixture of the orthodox chic and degenerate. So slowly but surely, I'm putting it together.
I'll tell my wife. I had nothing. What's going on?
I got my wife like a card, a crypto card, and I loaded it up and I said, listen, you can buy whatever you want, but let's allocate some of that budget to making this area look good. You know, let's put on some shelves. I wanted books. Like, I think you can tell a lot about someone by the books they have behind them. You know, like I want to curate like the books that I care about. Put them up here. A few, you know, plushy toys, maybe, and some greenery. You know, some plants.
I've got my hyperliquid plushie somewhere here. I don't even know where actually. Somewhere.
Are you wearing your Arbitrum kippa?
Always. Never go anywhere.
Oh, I'll send you my address after that. I'll rock it.
Look, the problem is I don't have them here, so I keep forgetting to order more. I gotta get more.
You should send a bunch to Israel. There's a conference happening here. Actually, one of our next guests on the show is running. They're doing a crypto jungle conference here in September. So they also they're throwing a massive party. It's like the weekend before Rosh Hashanah. Also like at like the after party of this conference. It's the first time it's like we've had anything of that scale in Israel, because like we do a lot of these crypto meetups here, and it's very like small and local, you know, like we have good people, but it's never like a Singapore or a Korea blockchain week or like a Dubai scale, you know, and like that's when we're trying to do it. But I mean, right now it's not the best of time to try and do anything international here, so. Well, you know, I think when things start to calm down on the political front, you'll see more of those events happening, and then you can hand out these. You know, I'm sure you'll have a lot of takers for that.
100%.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't know if Mati's going to join us or not. Usually Mati comes on the show. We do a little bit of an intro in the market. We kind of review what's happening in the coins, and then we go into whatever project the guest has to offer. We do a little demonstration because most of the time Mati or I or the audience hasn't really heard of our guest, and then you know Mati asks some questions or I ask some questions, and then we end the show. But today I think Mati's not here, so we don't have like our market update guy. Everyone knows Arbitrum, so we don't need really a demonstration because like, you know, everyone knows Arbitrum. Everyone's probably, you know, if you're even relatively degen enough, and even now we'll talk obviously about the Robinhood news. Even now, if you're not a degen, you know Arbitrum, and like there's no hard question to ask because like it's Arbitrum, you know. So I think we can do something a bit differently today. So it's a one-on-one. Like it's incredible to catch up with you. For those of you out there who are listening, tuning in. Welcome to the show. It's great to have AJ on. AJ and I met, it was 15 years ago. 15 years ago. That's a big number. Yeah.
Crazy. It's actually crazy to hear about that number. Yeah, right. I mean, like January 2010, maybe?
Yeah. I came January 2010, and you were in there like we met in a post high school college. For Jewish studies, right? KBY represent, and AJ's the co-founder of the CEO of Arbitrum, also went to the same school, but I missed him because I was a year younger. But essentially, lots of mind share ran through that campus, right?
Yeah, we were roommate. Like we just remember how in the dorms there was like you shared a bathroom with the room next to you. So Steven and I were like one room apart with a bathroom connection. So
Oh
we met on
wow.
the first day. It's been like a friendship ever since. It's like
Where was that? The Hilton or the
Plaza,
Sheraton?
Plaza.
Plaza, yeah, I was in the Plaza. I started off in the Plaza, but because we came in the middle of the year, we always had like the changing of the guard
Yeah,
happened halfway through our year. So as soon as there was an opening in the King David, the South Africans would snap that shit up.
yep. There you go.
Yeah, but that's incredible. And like, how did you guys stay in touch? Like, because for the first, as I said, 15 years we've been out of school, and like for the first 6 or 7 years, I stayed in really good touch with the boys. Like, I even went to Simcha Weissman's wedding in New York. I surprised him for his wedding. There's like a video of me like just rocking up and like, what the hell? Like, he didn't know that I was there.
That's
I
amazing.
rocked up at my mate's house, and I stayed in good touch with them. And like some of them came to South Africa, they stayed in my house, whatever. But like the last 7 to 8 years, like besides for Avi Roston, shout out to Roston, who's in the Yellow Bitcoin group. He got me one of my first gigs in crypto. But besides for that, like I don't really stay in touch, unfortunately, with the boys that much. Not even the South Africans now that I've left. So you and Steven stayed in touch throughout these years, or you
So
reconnected later?
yeah, so we went to like college together, so that was helpful. But the funny thing is, so like we were pretty good friends, like not the closest friends. And then when I got into Bitcoin in 2014, I started like reading everything, right? So naturally, I bought like the Bitcoin textbook. I read the whole thing cover to cover, and then I look at the cover, as people do, and I realize that Stephen was one of the authors. And like the first thing that goes through my head is I can't believe I just spent $65 buying Steven's book. But so anyways, I pinged him, like I didn't realize you were into Bitcoin too. And so this was like 2014. Then we started like shitcoin trading together for a little bit. 2018 comes around. He's like, I think I've got this new project that I'm going to build called Arbitrum. I've been working on it in the research center at Princeton. We think it's really cool. So I had just started a career as like a real estate lawyer, like literally like 6 months out of law school, ready to get going. So I started helping them as like with their legal work. I started like doing some like informal advising for them. Steven's like, why don't you join us full time? The problem was like there was nothing for me to do. Like I don't know how to code. All they had to do was code, and there was no like BD work. So anyways, fast forward to 2020. We were actually at, I don't know if you remember Moso, we were actually at his wedding. And I go
What a
to
legend.
Steven, I'm like, Steven, you've really got to work on your like technical game. Like all you guys put out is like technical content. Nobody has any idea what you're talking about. And he's like, well, all right, fine, let's revisit that conversation. Why don't you just join us full time to do like non-engineering stuff? So this was like, they're just launching on testnet like that week. So I quit my job and I joined. Basically that week, or whatever. I gave 2 weeks notice, kind of thing. And yeah, it's been like 5.5 years working full time together, and it's been amazing.
Awesome story. It's what book did he write on Bitcoin?
I might have it right here. The number one Bitcoin textbook. Here you go.
Bitcoin and cryptocurrency
This came out in
technologies.
2013. This is like the Bitcoin textbook. So Stephen and Edward Felton are like the two of the three co-founders of Arbitrum at Princeton, basically.
Yeah.
Ed was the professor, and then Stephen was doing his PhD. So yeah, like this is like, I mean, they haven't put out a second edition. It's been like 12 years, and they've been cooking too much with Arbitrum. But like that was for the longest time like the textbook, and maybe it still is, for how to learn about crypto.
Wow. For like university level?
Yeah, exactly. It's like a proper like university textbook. But what's hilarious about it is that they like it's pre-Ethereum. They don't even talk about Ethereum.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's 2013.
So what are they talking about there? Like Bitcoin and like some
mining, consensus mechanisms, forking, uncles, like all the stuff that you have to sort of understand for like, blockchain 101 architecture, basically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Interesting. I wrote a book on Bitcoin like a couple of years ago. It's not a textbook. I'm sure you'll appreciate it. It's basically, like how Rashi text is written in sort of like you have the the verse, and then you have the commentary,
Yeah.
and then the verse. So I did that with the white paper. So I
Oh,
took
no
like the
way.
whole white paper. It's a 104-page book on the white paper, and no one's read it cover to cover, so I cannot tell you what the feedback's been like. Especially the last chapter. The last chapter took me like 2 years to finish because it's essentially a statistical model of a hash rate war between hackers and honest miners in Bitcoin. So it was a lot of back and forth on the formula and what they mean. And actually, one of the Israeli researchers, Meni Rosenfeld, he actually argued with Satoshi on his choice of statistical model to model that hash rate war. So it's a little bit of trivia over there, but yeah, I think I think the book is interesting, but as you mentioned, it's pre-Ethereum, like any textbook, and that's probably why they don't teach it in universities. Because like, which professor has the time to keep up with the curriculum? Like,
I
you
know.
can't. If you had to teach something in 2021, like it's completely different, even from one semester to the next. Like you're teaching meme coins, and then suddenly it's not relevant, or you're teaching like one type of technology, ZK or roll up. You're teaching roll up, and now the conversation is sort of on L2. So maybe take us back. I think let's go to the beginning, like 2018, when you first kind of reconnected with Steven. What was the kind of back then? We had Ethereum, and we had a lot of chatter around plasma and sharding and roll up.
Yeah.
Very generic sort of
State
technical
channels.
concept. Pardon?
State channels. Remember
Yeah.
state channels?
So all these things they weren't like brands; they were very generic. And then the L2, narrative came out, and that's where you had a lot of the brands coming out. So maybe like give us
Yeah.
a little look back to what the conversation was like then
So,
around scaling Ethereum.
so it's a great question. So the funniest thing about the Arbitrum story, and like I'll send you the YouTube link after so you can see it, is that Arbitrum actually predates Ethereum. And you can say like, how is that possible? Like Arbitrum scales Ethereum. So what happened was when the first smart contract white paper started coming out in like 2013, 2014, Ed, when he was at Princeton, was like, there's no way if we want to keep it secure and decentralized, that this is going to scale with without what we now call layer 2 like roll-up technology architecture. So he dedicated his fall 2014 class seminar to building Arbitrum. So Ethereum didn't exist, so they did it on top of like a hypothetical L1. They called it like Bitcoin, obviously, just because of simplicity. But it was a hypothetical L1 that could have smart contract support. And they started designing the first engine of the Arbitrum like fraud-proof mechanism. So this is in 2014, before Ethereum even existed. What happened was Ed then went to the White House. He was Obama's deputy CTO. When he came back in 2018 after Trump was elected, Stephen and Harry went into his office and they said, remember that thing you were working on? We think Ethereum is going to need it. CryptoKitties just congested the Ethereum blockchain, right? So it was the first time that we saw really congestion was like 3 years into Ethereum's history. Obviously, it's in perpetual congestion now. And that's when they started building Arbitrum. At the time, there wasn't this concept of like roll-ups. Like nobody really knew what it was. They went through a ton of iterations. This is like a great example of like how you can find product market fit. I remember the first versions of Arbitrum that they were scoping was intended to be like almost like a private architecture for each application. So if you wanted to launch an app, you launch like an Arbitrum roll-up, essentially what we would call it today. Then you settle back to L1. And then they realized, wait, we need to have like full general purpose smart contract EVM compatibility in order for this thing to work. We can't build like application specific logic. So there's been like a ton of iterations. They've had versions of this, which are almost like state channels. Like, it took a long time to go from the earliest iteration of what Arbitrum is from a technical level. Because at its core, it's really about the proof mechanism, right? Just so, in case your listeners don't understand what that means exactly. Basically, the biggest question between roll-ups technology is, how do you tell the L1 that what happens on the L2 is true, correct, and complete? And that's like the critical thing, right? So like there's optimistic roll-ups, there's ZK roll-ups, there's trade-offs between the two of them. But that's the core thing that they're trying to solve, because that's how you get the scalability and the throughput that we need to continue bringing people on chain. So You can do that in a lot of different ways. You can do that in an application-specific way. You can do that using the EVM. You do that using, for example, like Starkware, build your own programming language and use a ZK rollups. There's a million different ways you can do this. Um, I think one of the things that made Arbitrum very successful early on was that it realized like full EVM compatibility is like extremely powerful, especially in 2020. Like DeFi summer, everybody wanted to get more and more on chain, and Arbitrum was the first roll up to be able to offer that. I think that was probably um, the biggest component of like an ingredient for success, basically.
Okay, so I wanna kind of just dive into the technology a little bit, and then we can go into the meaty stuff, the TVL and DeFi and all of that. But you mentioned ZK and optimistic rollups, right? So like maybe you can kind of
Yeah.
explain a little bit about where Arbitrum falls in that spectrum and what kind of design decision you guys made when you were launching the chain, because and I remember back in the day there was a lot more focus on this tech stuff, like in when Arbitrum and all the L2s were first getting started. Like there wasn't really proof. Like you didn't know which one was going. Maybe you guys knew, but the market didn't know which one was going to win yet, based on the tech. So all we had to go on is the technicals. But right now, I think it's still interesting to revisit that technical conversation from back in the day to kind of see what design decision you guys made when that was going live.
Yeah. So this is like a really critical component. So let's talk briefly about like what an optimistic versus ZK rollup looks like, because I think that will be a helpful setting. So like I said, the key thing that all rollups are trying to do is how do you tell Ethereum that what occurred on the L2 is true, correct, and complete? So optimistic rollups, what they do is, and you can get it from the name optimistic, what they do is they optimistically post to Ethereum and they open a window for somebody to challenge and say, actually, that's not true, correct, and complete, right? And anybody has an incentive to do so because, like, they'll make money basically if they can prove the system is honest when it was acting dishonestly. Um, that window is like what we call, it's an arbitrary number. It could be 30 minutes, it could be 7 days. Vitalik liked 7 days for a long time, so we set 7 days. And it's a 7-day window basically for anybody to almost submit to Ethereum as if it was like a court of appeals, right? For example, that like what was posted by the L2 to the L1 is true, correct, and complete. ZK rollups, and so ZK rollups, they take a different approach. They say instead of posting optimistically and seeing if somebody's going to challenge, we are going to generate this like fancy cryptographic proof that we're going to submit to Ethereum that can only be correct if everything that happened on the L2 was true, correct, and complete. So they're using almost like a math mechanism to prove that what happened on the L2 is true and correct and complete. And an optimistic rollup is using what we call like an optimistic
Challenges.
challenge.
Yeah.
The thing about a challenge, and like in production, there hasn't been a challenge on the L2, is in order to submit a challenge, if you're wrong, you lose a lot of money, right? So there's nobody who's incentivized to just challenge the system for the sake of challenging it. We did have one very interesting example of somebody just submitting a challenge. So what happened was, do you remember after the merge on Ethereum, there was this like ETH POW thing for like a week?
Yeah, I did DJ. I did lose a few schmeckles there. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. So
On the fake ETH from this, like we thought it was like as a Bitcoin maxi, I was like, yeah, there might be like this hardcore like.
yeah, like what happened with ETH Classic like 5 years ago,
Yeah,
right? The same thing.
yeah,
Right? So everybody took some speculation bets. So basically, what happened was when the merge happened, Arbitrum as a rollup protocol existed on both the ETH POW fork and also obviously what we call Ethereum today. And there was like 800,000 ETH in the Arbitrum bridge at the time, which means there was 800,000 ETH POW in the other bridge. And that, at the time it was worth like $6 million. So somebody actually submitted an invalid state root to Ethereum and tried stealing all of the ETH POW from the Arbitrum bridge, unlike the ETH POW fork, right? We anticipated that this might happen, so one of my colleagues at the time ran a validator on ETH POW, which was like really annoying and everything, but he defended the chain, basically. he defended the chain against this attacker who posted an invalid state route, trying to steal all of the EPOW. The guy probably just assumed that nobody was going to be watching that bridge contract because obviously like it was a deprecated fork. But it was pretty funny to sort of see the challenge mechanism work like in basically a production environment on a network that, obviously because of the merge became irrelevant. The trade-offs between the two, just so you understand, historically, and this is why we had this thesis in 2020 about using optimistic rollups, are twofold. One is, as you can imagine, much cheaper to do things optimistically than generate these very expensive ZK proofs, right? Because in order for me to post to Ethereum, I don't actually have to spend any money to prove it in an optimistic sense, unless there's a challenge, which doesn't occur. But a ZK has all of that cost overhead to generate these ZK proofs. And in 2020, that was like millions of dollars a year, right? And either fees are funding that or you have to get your users to fund it. And if you want to have your users fund it, it's going to be much more expensive than like an optimistic system, right? The second is it was much easier to get EVM compatibility with an optimistic system than it was with a ZK system. So those are the two core differences, right? So I'm sure you're familiar with the Starkware team in Israel. Instead of trying to get EVM compatibility in 2020, 2019, they just said, we're going to build our own language, Cairo, which is like optimized for what we want to build on the ZK side. Our approach was we want to create as little friction as possible for an EVM developer to be able to just launch on L2, right? So like full port, one click, you can get any EVM app you want to launch on Arbitrum, and that was like our strategy. The thing that Stephen likes to point to, which I think is really important, is Arbitrum doesn't have its technology in its name, right? So if you look at like Optimism, optimistic rollup, ZK Sync, obviously a ZK rollup, Starkware, a Stark focused ZK rollup. We're just Arbitrum, right? We just want to have arbitration between that L2 and L1 to make sure that what occurs is true, correct, and complete. And the reason for that is because we don't have anything against ZK technology. Like, we think about this as like, if you hired a plumber to fix your toilet, you wouldn't tell him you got to use a hammer, or you got to use a wrench, or you got to use your pliers. You would just say, fix the toilet. And the way we thought about Ethereum scaling is we just need to scale Ethereum. We don't care if it's a rollup that uses optimistic technology. We don't care if it's a rollup that uses ZK technology. At the time, the thing that brought us to market first was optimistic technology with EVM compatibility that we wanted. Today, ZK costs are coming down. And this has been something that people have been saying for 5 years. ZK costs are going to come down. What are you going to do to compete when it does? And there's no reason you can't upgrade Arbitrum to being a ZK rollup. The thing is, though, we probably are going to take a more hybrid approach to this. And the way to think about it is like basically post optimistically, but instead of waiting 7 days for a challenge, if you ever need to prove the state, you just submit a ZK proof on demand, right? So like if anybody wants to say, let's say I want to challenge the system. I don't wait 7 days for like a challenge game or the rollup protocol to play out. Just submit a ZK proof at the time. And I think that's probably the hybrid optimistic ZK steady like
I've been hearing about that around. It's
so like we've got a ton of ZK research talent. We've been working with a bunch of the ZK teams because we don't actually think we need to generate a proof every time. You should optimistically design your system, and if anybody says no, I don't believe it, we need to. So we would probably have a more hybrid approach. It brings costs down significantly. But yeah, that's probably the history from a technical perspective of the difference in between ZK and optimistic rollups.
Thanks for that epic explanation. It's a lot more clear to me, and I've seen this hybrid model around. Like, I'm curious more on the thought of the business branding, the positioning side of L2s, because you talk a lot about scaling Ethereum as the goal, but a lot of L2s, like essentially you've got your own token, the L2s have their own token. If someone's buying your token, they're not buying ETH. And the demand for your token or for OP or for any other L2 token reduces demand for ETH because you don't need any more to pay for L1 block space. You can pay for L2 block space, and the L2 will somehow aggregate that and pay once every while for L1 block space. So in a way, and more than that, you mentioned Stockware, for example. Stockware are now, going after Bitcoin as well
Yep.
and starting to settle to Bitcoin. So it seems like L2, there's a move within L2s to kind of, I'm Stockware, I'm this, I'm that, I'm my own network chain, I'm a hub for developers. What I'm running under the hood is, I run Ethereum under the hood. Maybe I'll submit to Solana, maybe I'll submit to that. But from a positioning standpoint, like, or it seems like you guys are very much Ethereum aligned in that way, as opposed to setting off on your, as an independent network.
I mean, yes and no, in the sense that I think that like alignment for the sake of alignment is a very dangerous and toxic perspective, right? Like, Arbitrum runs like a business. It needs to run like a business. Arbitrum's best business success case is settling to Ethereum and utilizing Ethereum security for consensus, right? So like at Off-Chain Labs, we believe heavily in Ethereum as being the best settlement layer. That's why, Prism, which is the leading staking client for Ethereum, Off-Chain Labs builds that too. We're known obviously mainly for Arbitrum, but we also build Prism as well. Thinking though about why you need L2 tokens is actually very critical. I think that people don't really appreciate the role of I'm not going to say like every L2 token does this, but a well-designed L2 token, and I would say Arbitrum, everything I'm saying is going to be true about Arbitrum. There's two main things you need an L2 token for. Number one, and this is even if you use ETH as gas like Arbitrum does. Number one, and most importantly, one of the things about roll-up architecture is that you cannot fork a roll-up. Right, so if Ethereum, we talked about the merge earlier. If Solana has to do an upgrade, whether it's for a bug or whether it's for an improvement, they just fork the network, and the validators have a consensus that they change the software that they're running. L2s cannot do that unless the L1 is willing to fork for them. It'd be a very dangerous position for Arbitrum, which is the leading layer 2 roll for Ethereum stack-wise, or any L2, to assume that Ethereum will fork for it. So if you can't assume that, you have to rely on the fact that you need another upgradability mechanism. So with Arbitrum, what we have is token-based upgradability. In order to upgrade the protocol, you need to have a vote by the token holders. And that's like a very critical component of the system. The second important place in the differences between L1s and L2s. So let's take Ethereum or Solana, or any L1 really that's other than Bitcoin. If there's, let's say, $100 in transaction fees that users pay, those fees get passed through to validators, right? L2 architecture is very different. For security purposes, in L2, let's say you have $100 in transaction fees, it pays the L1 about $5. Right? So the L1 is only making $5 for security. The question you now have is, what do you do with this other $95? You don't need it for security. So there's no reason necessarily to give it to token holders, because that's almost like premature if you have better use of the funds. So what do you do with it? And that's where you need a strong and robust governance system to figure out what to do with this money. So like, for example, and I'll try to pull it up now and see if I can find it, the Arbitrum token holders in the DAO control, 2.6 billion ARB, which is like almost $1.5 billion, like $1.2 billion. But on top of that, and I think more interestingly, they control about $175 million of non-ARB assets, right? So that's just assets that are ETH and other like stablecoin assets that are controlled by the DAO. And you need to figure out what to do with this, how to invest it. Should it be returned to token holders? Should it not be returned to token holders? And governance needs to play a really critical decision in doing that. So that's like the role of L2 tokens. In terms of like competition with the L1, I think they're just very different businesses. I would not value, and again, none of this is obviously financial advice, but I would not value an L1 and an L2 token using the same sort of parameters. So that's like my take on it. Like, people sort of have this like question, like, are L2s parasitic? I don't think they are. I think they're the largest customers of Ethereum, and they also have to have their own business models.
Yeah. So Arb is as a governance token, because a lot of ETH, for example, or some other L2 token, they might be gas token, but Arb is different in that it's a governance token.
Yeah,
like on the top.
the ARB token is not used to use the network. You do not have to interact with ARB in any way to use the Arbitrum blockchain.
Yeah, you got to use, you pay gas in ETH.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so on the topic of governance, like, a lot of times in governance, like, I don't know the exact stats because I kind of like, for the reason I'm going to say soon, it's like a lot of people are very cynical about governance tokens, especially the maxis. Like, essentially, how many people actually vote in governance? One, and number two, it's, in a lot of cases, the foundation or the insiders or the VCs or whatever, they control the supply, and like, it's a lot of decentralization theater going on. So
Yep.
I got a feeling that Arbitrum is a bit it's different, both from like following Steven. But how do you guys think about that? About like having it be like real decentralization and not just
So
theater.
we set up. So there's a couple of things. So the Arbitrum Foundation, compared to other foundations, has actually an extremely limited role in the system. For context, their entire allocation is like 7% of the token supply that vests over the first 4 years. So they've gotten like 4.5% of the token supply compared to like other foundations where it will be typically between 25 and 35% of the token supply. They've also like they don't vote those tokens; they're excluded from the voting. So that's sort of like table stakes from our perspective. Arbitrum governance is very robust. When we launched the DAO, we gave it fully to token holders. In fact, the Arbitrum Foundation actually lost the first vote in Arbitrum governance, which is actually kind of hilarious if you kind of think about it. But the token holders did not vote in favor of like what we call AIP1, which is I think a very strong signal that Arbitrum governance is very robust. I'm looking now at like the latest proposals, and there's somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 people that typically vote on proposals, and it's pretty distributed. So it's actually a very robust governance process. If you look, there's like a lot of like very contentious votes that happen. Not everything just like passes with the stamp of approval. It's actually quite exciting to see sort of how governance has very much evolved. Oh, did I lose you, Dudu? You might be muted. I can't hear you. Nope. I don't know if your users. It could be just me. I don't know if your users can hear you. Is there a chat function to find out? Now you're muted. No, it's looking like a rug. Unless it's just me. Should I try rejoining?
Completely right, man.
There you go. You're
Yeah,
back.
okay, now you can hear me.
Yeah.
Oh well, I don't know what happened there. I got rugged, but yeah, I definitely, especially the amount of tokens that the Arbitrum Foundation has, that's definitely a big plus. So I want to talk about two more topics. Number one is DeFi in general, like what you guys did to get kind of the TVL you did. Any tips you have for DeFi projects to bootstrap TVL, from your journey. And the other one I want to end off with is your appearance in Cannes with Robinhood. Obviously, tokenized stocks very much in the zeitgeist right now. So maybe start off with DeFi. Like guys got $3 billion TVL. That's pretty serious. So, what did you do to kind of bootstrap that? How did you kind of solve the cold start problem in that regard?
Yeah, it's a great question. So basically, when we started, I'll get a little bit of an echo. Do you want to do? I think it's when we switch mics or something. When we started Arbitrum, we had a thesis that we thought DeFi was like the most important category to build, and what the best product market fit is for blockchains, maybe alongside payments. And now we spend a lot of time focusing on the convergence of TradFi and DeFi into what we just think is going to be the future of finance, where DeFi powers the crypto rails of the future. This is kind of like Robinhood and kind of answering both questions together. But we've held that conviction and been supporting builders who are aligned with that vision of what blockchain technology can do for the last 4 or 5 years. And there are other categories, like, for example, meme coins, where Arbitrum does not do as well. So maybe there was a trade-off here in some sense in terms of what our priorities were. And I'm not trying to sort of say meme coins are bad or anything. I think they're just very different. So I think that one of the things that the reason why we've done well and had the staying power in this is that we've had conviction to just believe in what we think our product market fit is and what the value is that we can offer. And like, I think that consistency and just showing up every day and talking about the same thing is what leads to a lot of the DeFi innovation happening on Arbitrum. So for example, we see a lot of early stage protocols like choose Arbitrum as their home. So Pendle in 2022, for example, really found its place on Arbitrum, and they've done a massive job of expanding ever since. And I'm proud to be a small footnote in their journey. But when they launched their new product, Boros, last week, they launched that on Arbitrum. And a lot of that is a function of just them understanding that this is sort of the home of DeFi innovation. The technology is good. Our team is going to be supportive. Same with Hyperliquid, right? So obviously now they've turned into their whole own ecosystem. But Hyperliquid for the longest time was sourcing 100% of its liquidity from Arbitrum for the exact same reasons. The home of DeFi, decentralized technology, good, credibly neutral, secure, liquid environment. So I think our success is probably a function of just of that, like just showing up every day with a thesis. Obviously, you have to adjust your thesis if the times change, but providing value to builders and them having conviction that you're going to be there when they need them most. In terms of Robinhood, that was a very exciting announcement. So for those unfamiliar, Robinhood is like rebuilding their entire company on chain using crypto rails to power the next version of stock trading with tokenization. And they're looking to do all of that on Arbitrum. They're starting right now with Arbitrum 1, which is like the public Arbitrum chain. And then they're going to be working with us to build their own blockchain using the Arbitrum tech stack. So, we're very much a part of this journey for them. It's very exciting for both me personally. I was involved with that deal for about 2 to 3 years at this point, as well as the broader Arbitrum ecosystem. So, yeah, I mean, Khan was like almost like the culmination of a lot of, I would say, hard work and dedication to the thesis for the broader, team.
Wait, you were working on this thing for 2 years. That means you started talking to Robinhood about tokenized stocks when Gary Gensler was still around. Walk me through like how the conversation shifted when the CNN called the election for Trump.
So they were prioritizing Europe, right? Because for them, they want to use crypto as an expansion of their user base, right? So like getting U.S. people onto tokenized stocks is not as high of a priority in the sense that they already have brokerage licenses here. So like the conversation at the time was really focused on the EU. So it wasn't as impactful because they were working with EU regulators. But yeah, it's been a long time coming.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. I do remember that it's for Europe, but like my question with tokenized stocks, and like I'm kind of playing devil advocate here because I do believe in them. But the one question I keep getting, and I'm obviously, I was at INX before I had like went solo like in real world assets for a while, and like you believe in a lot of the hype, and then eventually you take a step back and like try and think critically, like, well, is there a real point for that? And for me, with tokenized stocks, it's like the European guys, they have Revolut, they have other apps, they have even Robinhood. Like, what the difference for them with buying on a Tesla on chain via Robinhood or buying a normal Tesla via Robinhood? Like 24/7 trading is something that people throw out there, but I mean, like buying Robinhood.
To me, that's not the main value prop. There's two main
so
value props. So first, from the perspective of Robinhood, it's much easier for them to expand to new jurisdictions using a tokenization model because they're basically just like they don't have to relaunch new infrastructure. They can use the same tokenization platform and just expand the front end to different jurisdictions once they get approval, right? So that's like the core benefit is the ability for them to operationally expand their business more quickly, right? The second is, which will, I think, lead to a lot of improvement just globally. Like, if you imagine sort of developing countries, you might not want to set up a whole brokerage regime. It might not be possible. You might want to set up local custody of these things or compliance with local custody. But if you just expand a tokenization engine, it's much more cost effective to move into different jurisdictions. The second, and I think real benefit, is just the composability of blockchains. It's not as true today, but Robinhood, in their presentation when they spoke about this, was very focused on how do we get these assets to be self-sovereign instead of just living only within the Robinhood app. And that difference is critical because, today, if you want to post your collateral to borrow money against your stock portfolio, you could not do that very easily unless you've got decent banking relationships. I think probably I'm sure some fintechs are trying to solve this, but it's not going to be as easy as posting it to Aave, right? For example. And we're not there in the world yet, but that's, I think, where we're going. And I think very critically, that's the vision that that this convergence has, is the ability to utilize and own your assets in a very sovereign way. And I think that's obviously the crypto vision broadly. And I think it depends on the issuer. A lot of organizations might not care about this. They might but I think that Robinhood does a lot. And on a personal level, that really resonates with me. To have true ownership of your assets, to be able to do with it, utilize them however you want, wherever you want. You're on mute, Dudu.
Again, I feel like the composability is a super important. It's what I come back to, being able to do stuff in DeFi with your tokenized stock. But I want to focus on the L1 part as well, because they're starting off on Arbitrum 1. They want to spin off their own chain. We just had big news, so I'm very happy that you came. It's well orchestrated that I have you here, because Circle just announced that they are launching a layer 1 called ARC with USDC as the gas token. Also, we had Stripe announced that they're doing a chain. How are you guys repositioning for this? Because I think I asked you this on Twitter. Is Arbitrum making a play for white label, because it seems like Uniswap launched their own chain, Pudgies are doing a chain. It seems like DeFi, TradFi, NFTs, everyone gets big enough and then they launch their own chain. So how do you guys see that kind of great? Are you going to just cater to the mid-tier projects, or is this Robinhood deal the start of something new where Arbitrum becomes powered by Arbitrum?
We had a product called Arbitrum Orbit. We're powering either the most or the second most chains of any tech stack in existence today. So obviously we're going to be powering the Robinhood chain. We're also building a Athena's chain that they're building together with Securitize called Converge. That's going to be an Arbitrum chain. Plume Network, which is one of those major RWA chains, that's an Arbitrum chain. Corn, which you're probably familiar with, which is trying to build a Bitcoin ecosystem, that's an Arbitrum chain. We built a chain for the Yuga Labs and ApeCoin community called Ape Chain. So I think total, all in all, there's about 125 Arbitrum chains that are either in testnet or in production already. We want to power this. Our whole thesis is we want to have control of the developer relationship throughout the life cycle. So if you're small and you want to be on a public chain, we want Arbitrum 1 to be the best home for you. And as you expand, let's say you want to have your own chain, we want to be able to support that and offer the best experience for building your own network.
Yeah, I think that's a great strategy. I mean, I knew about some of those names. I knew about Ape Chain. I knew about a couple of those names, but it's crazy. Corn obviously. I like the Bitcoin DeFi space. So 125 is a massive number. So good luck with that. I want to at the end of the show, and I want to take us back to where we started, talking about our time at school and where we met Steven and all of that. Because there's a lot of people listening here. I think Arbitrum, obviously, I could ask you guys your plans for 2025 or stuff like that, but it's very clear what your plans for 2025 are: to continue dominating. You probably have a lot more Robin Hoods that you can't tell us about, so I won't put you on the hot seat over there. We'll wait to see as the news drop, because Arbitrum, that sort of end-to-end life cycle chain solutions for whatever you're building in tokenized assets, DeFi, NFTs. It's a very strong proposition. But I want to kind of ask you personally, like, if you had to go back, I mean, I don't know anyone that's studying in our school now, but if you had to go back and you had to meet a 19, 20-year-old guy who's about to finish, his time in school and go to university or get a job or whatever, like, what would you tell him about working in crypto? What would you tell him about like the pluses, the minuses, how to break into crypto? Like, how would you kind of guide a young AJ or a young like school student from KBY on a path to kind of accelerate his growth in crypto?
So there's a couple of things I would say. First of all, you have to follow your passion. Sometimes crypto is hot, sometimes it's not. If you're not truly passionate about it, you're likely to get blown out of the water, in the sense that there are people who live and breathe this industry, whether it's from a cultural perspective, whether it's from a philosophical perspective. It's going to be very hard to outcompete them if you don't actually believe in what this industry is doing. So that's sort of like almost like a word of caution, because I know, like, depending on where we are in the crypto life cycle, I have a lot of people who, like, say, oh, I'm interested in getting a crypto job. Unless you truly have the passion, I'd be very, very cautious to recommend it. Like, I used to be a real estate lawyer. I used to do development deals in New York. I knew that I loved crypto and I needed to work in it full time. If I made that change, and one of the reasons I made that change was I realized that there are a lot of people who are a lot more passionate about real estate development than me, and they're probably going to beat me at that. So that's the first thing I would say. Like, whatever you're doing, whether it's crypto or not, it's very hard to win if you're not passionate. The thing I would say specifically about crypto, and this is maybe almost like counterintuitive if you know the space well, there's no shortcuts to hard work, and there's no shortcuts to building a product that people want. Yes, there's plenty of people who launch a token. Maybe some of them get rich, some of them don't. But if you're really trying to change the world, if you're trying to do something impactful, you're trying to create value, there's no shortcuts, and it's just really hard work. And that would be sort of my advice, to not sort of fall into the trap and think that there would be shortcuts in this industry just because it's built on different, more scalable, rails. Crypto's a meritocracy. I've seen 13-year-olds do incredible things in this industry, and that's like amazing. So age is not a factor, gender is not a factor. Wherever you're from should not be limiting factors. But the common thread is you have to work hard and put in the effort. So that's always the advice I like to give, I think, because it's sometimes less
Yeah,
obvious.
I think I think for me, the school we went to, it's a very, like, a lot of cerebral guys that like to think, so crypto does have that aspect, and for me, like, that's how I got in the rabbit hole, like the technology, the concepts, the very idea of governance as a way to kind of make the hierarchical top down, institutions that we grew up with obsolete was a big draw for me at the beginning. All the ideas of, like, studying what Byzantine fault tolerance means and understanding, all the ramifications of that was super attractive at the beginning. But as I grow up in the space, like, I'll be honest with you, I don't read many, like, heavy heavy research reports anymore. Like, for me now, it's about feeding my family. It's about sovereign money, in a sense of kind of releasing the grip of the Fed and of the fiat institutions that I've seen with my own eyes have robbed people in Africa of their health, their happiness, their well-being. Replacing that with decentralized money, and I believe decentralized finance as well. And then it's as you said, the cultural aspect. Like, for me, like, funny enough, as I grow older, I resonate much more with the cultural aspect than with the intellectual aspect of crypto. Like, I still appreciate the intellectual aspect, but it's not like I'm much more about the memes and about the get-togethers and about the community aspects of that now. So I think that's kind of something that I would share with them as well, and also in the traditional world, like you probably applied for your real estate law job. Maybe there was a job fair at your college, and you send them a CV, and you go through a round of interviews. And in Web3, it works a little different. Like if you're coming in and offer value aggressively, you can create jobs that weren't there in the first place. So it's like you need to think there's a concept of like the third door, like the back door. Like you have the front door and the back door and the third door, like where you can find different ways to get jobs. In crypto, there's no doors. It's like an open TP, and you have to force your way in, like through adding value, through showing up. I think that's also sort of a mindset shift for young people that are looking to get in.
100%.
So AJ, I know I said I wouldn't ask you this question, but I have to anyway. In the next 4 months of the year, 2025, where you guys, where's your head at? What are you focused on? Like you're a family man. You only have a few hours in the day, 24 hours. You sleep a bit, you eat a bit, you spend some time at the gym or studying. Like in your time that you have working, like your team, your company, where are your focuses? What are your sort of your areas that you want to achieve until the year is out, and what's next for Arbitrum?
So I think from a business development perspective, I mean, there's a lot of stuff on the technical roadmap, but better probably not worth getting into now, and a lot of it's still in stealth. But on the business development is continuing to, I would like to say, solve the hardest problems for bringing the world on chain by building out the best technical solutions for it. And the area that we're primarily focusing on is this convergence of TradFi and DeFi into just the future of finance. And I think we're very well situated for that. So we're, continuing to push in those efforts more and more to make sure that we can be at that the infrastructure at that convergence. And yeah, there's
Uh,
nothing else in the day, that's for sure.
yeah, I mean it's that's where the big money's at. I mean it's crazy to hear that that's where your focus is as well. Like it bringing TradFi on train. What's your take on on the whole you know, the crypto treasury play in TradFi? Because it seems like TradFi is coming to DeFi in a sense of like what Robinhood is doing and what others are doing as well. And then DeFi is also coming to TradFi. Like I heard that some of the ETH treasury companies might start staking ETH or playing around. Like this can get very degenerate very quickly if Tom Lee and or Lubin decide that they want to start aggressive yield farming strategies with their ETH and like swing it back to token holders. And Trump's in the office, so anything goes really. Like how degenerate are we getting this cycle? With this kind of TradFi DeFi combination.
So I don't know, like some of the more, my whole take on the treasuries is I want to understand why a lot of these organizations are doing this, in the sense that it makes a lot of sense for me, in my perspective, why we would want to make these assets available to anybody everywhere. So what I mean by that is, I think one of the reasons why like Circle stock went up so much is because if you wanted to believe in the stablecoin play, right? You see what's happening with stablecoins. There weren't that many ways to get exposure to it if you're not a crypto native person, right? Like you might not be set up to like trade on Coinbase or on Binance or other exchanges. You might not be set up to hold crypto native assets. So I think the ways to get exposure were to buy Circle stock, or Ethereum's positioned itself well from a narrative perspective as being like the valuable token to hold because it's ultimately where a lot of this stablecoin activity is going to settle. Athena is launching their own treasury product, and I think it's great from the perspective of now people have a way to get exposure to Athena that they might not have otherwise had. So that perspective of these treasury products are very interesting to me because it's great for people to be able to just meet your customers or your investors where they are. Some of the stuff that I'm looking more into that I don't really fully understand is like how a lot of the capital markets of these things are structured. it seems like there's a lot of like leverage or tries ways to try and get like multiples on NAV that I don't really understand and are not like intuitive to me as like really core value propositions. So that feels like one of those things that like might get unsustainable very quickly and potentially could blow up. But the concept of these treasury vehicles are great, right? Like MicroStrategy being a way before ETFs for people to get exposure to Bitcoin, be able to have like leverage on Bitcoin play essentially because of the cash flows that the business generates. Those are interesting things. I'm just a little bit more cautious of some of the capital markets components of this
Yeah,
versus the broader theory.
the
Yeah.
leverage, the leverage. That's always what kills the fun. The leverage. People making some good money and they can't. The inner Homo economicus isn't satisfied, so he wants more. So he turns up the leverage. Yeah, please God, when there's an treasury company, we'll get back on for another show. But until then, thank you so much for your time. I had a great time. I had a great catch up,
Yeah.
and yeah, hopefully I'll bump into you somewhere in the world soon.
Where did we see?
Uh,
Were you? Did I see you in Singapore? I can't remember.
Singapore, yeah. I was walking to get we were like crossing each other on the pre-airport run for kosher food.
Oh yeah, exactly. Okay, are you going this year again or no?
It's on Yom Kippur. Are you
I know.
going?
I'm going. I'm going to be there on Monday and Tuesday, and I'm leaving Tuesday night to go home for
Oh,
Yom
okay.
Kippur.
No, I had a baby this year,
Okay.
and all the so she's 6 months now, and all the like token 2049 fell on like Yom Ha'atzmaut Dubai, and like got a new job going, and like all things converged that this year like no conferences, and next year I'm hoping to be back on the circuit. Like it's you gotta go there, but you have a good time in Singapore. Did you go to that fish restaurant?
Yeah,
I'd be looking forward just for that one.
it was delicious. I love that place. Yeah.
Aniba, that's what it's called. Aniba. It's been in my head, like on the tip of my tongue for months. I
Aniba,
forgot what
I'm
it's called.
coming. Aniba.
Yeah, Aniba. Okay, Avanti. It's
Uh,
yeah. I remember they had this dish like kadaif hairs, like these like crunchy things with tuna and yogurt, and it was just something else. So I enjoy have one for me, and
it's a Mayor Adoni restaurant, I think.
oh,
The Israeli
could
chef.
be.
Yeah, I think it. I think he was one of. Yeah, he's the. Yeah, it's a Mayor Adoni restaurant.
Yeah, there's a few of those here. There's a few of the. I remember you commented on one of my they had post about like about food because my daughter's name was Daria, so we took her to Daria in the Hilton.
Oh, incredible!
Yeah, yeah. But I remember that comment now.
I was there in January. It's a great spot.
Yeah, it's a super. But next time you come, I've got some. There's my favorite place right now is a place called Pasador. It's a 10 course meat meal in Tel Aviv. So you pay per head 10 course. So they bring you smoked and grilled and goose and duck and lamb and like it's just by the time you're done. And then when you finish, you can choose 3 dishes that you like the most. So there's no ways like you can come like 5 like rugby players after a game and a Yom Kippur fast and no one's going home hungry.
That's amazing. I want a
Yeah.
Brian next time I come, so I want you to make me some boerewors or something.
I live in Israel. I have to smuggle my meat from South Africa contraband. My mom's coming soon. She's gonna smuggle me some contraband. So if you come when we have supply, like the supply has to, I get airdrops. I
There
have
you
to
go.
do like challenges, and then I get airdrops every epoch,
There
which
you
is
go.
like every 2-3 months when my mom comes. Because otherwise, I have to buy the like Polish meat from the butchers here at overpriced rate.
There you go.
But that's one of the sacrifices we make for living here. I mean, the South African meat is just scary. It's like super, super cheap. Like you can get a steak for like $10 over there, and it's like the best steak you've ever tasted. Like 300-400 grams of pure beef.
I remember I went for a month. With
To South
friends.
Africa.
Yeah, the year before. Yeah, I went. I went to stay at the Sobels. For
Oh,
and
cool.
down in Kruger. Yeah, it was great.
That's
Awesome. All right, dude. Good
cool
to see
idea.
you.
We'll see you
Great
soon.
to
We'll
get
speak.
back.
Take care.